Welcome back to my garden. Over the last few weeks, I've been examining transformative experiences and their role in our path towards self-actualization. Transformative experiences, by their very nature, are powerful and difficult to embark upon because we have no way of predicting their outcome rationally. But as children, we merrily charge down a path when the odds might well be stacked against us. And the example that I've been using, and I'll continue to use for the sake of continuity. If you think of a high school kid first conceiving and then embarking upon the road towards becoming a doctor, an incredibly difficult thing to do. And yet, they do it, and many are successful. Why are they so successful? Well, actually, as difficult as the path is, it's laid out for them, broken up into manageable portions, and they are actively encouraged to do so. That's the reason why far more people from comfortable middle-class backgrounds become doctors than people from the village where I'm currently living. Because people here are simply not encouraged to go down that path, and not encouraged both explicitly by people within their school, for example, saying, yes, you can, this is the thing for you to do, and also implicitly by informally soaking up inspiration from people in their community around them, or perhaps even their very own family, who've trod the path that they dream of treading. So, although it is very difficult, it is something that is conceivable. Where does that leave us? In the middle of our lives, when we have a dream and we think of doing something that is at least as difficult, at least as challenging, at least as arduous and time-consuming. Well, it leaves us in a much less favourable place because we don't have a well-worn path to follow. The well-worn path is to just, if you're 40 years old, working in a high school, is to carry on doing that, or at least something very close to it, related, for the rest of your life. And when you have a crazy dream, as a middle-aged person, the people around you, at best, caution you against it, or ask you to think carefully about the full ramifications. At worst, laugh in your face. And that isn't to mention the fact that you will doubt that it is even possible. In a sense, whether we are young folk where I'm living today, or adults who have reached a certain point in their life, we have been programmed to believe that certain outcomes are possible, others much less so. And I hesitate, well, I didn't, I used the word program, but I'm a little reticent about it because it does sound a little conspiratorial. But I think in that sense, yes, we are. We are conditioned. Perhaps that's a better word. Encouraged to follow a line of thinking. At the end of my last video, I was talking about how perhaps that accounts for a failure in my development as a runner when I was in high school. That I'd been told by a very qualified coach that I was more than capable of running 10.6 seconds. And it made rational sense what he'd said to me, but I didn't believe it deep down in the core of my being. So I didn't. Now, over the last couple of weeks, a British athlete, Zarnell Hughes, has broken 2 long-standing sprint records. I guess records that go back about 30 years, if I'm doing my sums correctly. Linford Christie's 100-metre record and John Regis's 200-metre record. And Zarnell Hughes has smashed them. And one of the things that he attributes to his success is quite astonishing. I mean, what I'm going to tell you is far more astonishing than the fact that after 30 years, finally someone came along who wiped those records from the books. It's almost surprising that a British athlete hadn't done it before. Perhaps it says something of the state of British athletics for the last 20 years, I don't know. Or that perhaps says something of the golden age, as unlikely as it was back in the day when Linford and John set their records. Never mind. What Zarnell Hughes gives as one of the important things that he has done to enable him to run these athletes, these times, smashing these records. It's not just his coaching, and he's been training with Usain Bolt's coach in Jamaica. So, he's done the work, he's got the backup, he has the pedigree. Unlike so many of the great names of British sprinting, he was in fact, or he is, and they were, of Caribbean extraction. So maybe it's in the genes, who knows. But Zarnell says that one of the things that has been helping him is vision boards. Now that is an idea, a concept that certainly 10 years ago would have set my teeth on edge. But he backs up these 2 record-breaking runs with a quite astonishing, unbelievable story. On the morning of both races, in his training diary, he wrote down the identical time to the new record that he broke. I mean, I'm just letting that sink in. Now, those of you who are of a more mystical bent, and those of you who really take at face value Carl Jung's ideas of synchronicity, perhaps, or have read The Secret, will say, there, I told you so, Neil. Neil, the retired maths teacher and arch rationalist, would put forward a different explanation. On both occasions, the times he wrote down in his training diary were, for the 100 metres, 0.1, and for the 200 metres, 0.2 of a second faster than the existing records, which he knew. I mean, he knew what the times were, and he knows that 0.1 is a convincing but convenient drop on the existing record. So if he was going to choose a number at random that would be a plausible, I broke the new record, and one that he would be confident about, it would be a better time, but not a ridiculous time, hence the 0.1 and the 0.2. So psychologically, if I was thinking of those sort of illusionists, mentalists, kind of magician folk, this is the time that they would have written down on a piece of paper and sealed an envelope, predicting the time that he'd predicted. Of course it's the time. But all the same, they are writing that down in his training diary, of a bigger strategy. What he has been doing for quite some time now is building his vision board, where he has charted out his career as an athlete, both looking back on the past and out into the future, the goals he wants to achieve, and writing it down in great detail and imagining that in great detail. And that is very much what a vision board is. When I first came across the term, it was sort of this idea that you'd cut out pictures from a magazine and stick a picture of a mansion on your vision board, and then in a month's time you'd win the lottery. And I think that's nonsense, and I still think that's nonsense. But the idea of building up a very carefully detailed document that charts how you're going to go from where you are now to where you want to be in the future, and how you got to where you are now from the past, and you put it all together. This is not nonsense. It sort of relates quite nicely to an idea that my favorite popularizer of psychology, James Clear, writes about in Atomic Habits. He says that for someone trying to give up that vice, when you are offered a cigarette at a party, and you've been a pack-a-day kind of man or woman, instead of saying, "No thanks, I'm trying to give them up," what you should say is, "No thanks, I don't smoke." You must assume the identity. And that is what Zarnell Hughes has been consistently doing over a period of time. He's brainwashing himself, quite literally. And there is this idea of social programming, and conspiracy theorists will take one angle with it, social theorists might take another. But in some form or another, our lives guide what is going to happen in the future. And to change that path, we need to actually make a radical intervention. And perhaps at the point where we are resisting embarking upon some course of action that will be powerfully, remarkably, truly transformative, but in equal measure, very risky and incredibly disruptive, we need to carefully, painstakingly plan things out. Well, maybe not carefully, painstakingly, and obsessively plan things out in the sense of planning, and not actually doing anything. But we need to, on a daily basis, construct a new identity for ourselves. And one tool might be something akin to a vision board. I think the other thing that we need to do, and in Zarnell Hughes's story, when you're planning the trajectory of your career, what you're doing, as well as creating that shiny target far in the future, you're also looking at benchmarks, at landmark accomplishments, at tasks. You are looking at the thing that you can do right now to accomplish the very smallest and nonetheless necessary step in the right direction. So there we are, vision boards. 10 years ago, when I was being told by a teaching friend of mine of why, as it's said in The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, I should stick $100 bill and on my ceiling, look at it before I go to sleep at night, and invite money into my life. Well, I'd never have imagined myself saying vision boards in a video such as this. But there we are. Times change, and who knows? It might just be something that will make all the difference. Anyway, love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below, and until then, until next week, I trust your lives are filled with joy, and ciao from a sunny bosom.